So here we are in Chapter 10. We are looking at cell reproduction. Cells reproduce or divide for two main reasons. One is that we need to replace cells, we need to make more cells when we grow, we need to repair any damage to cells. So this is one of the main purposes of cell division. When an individual cell or cells make another copy of themselves for the purpose of growth, repair, or replacement. The second possible function of cell division has to do more with these simple prokaryotic or single-celled organisms. They can use cell division just to make a new cell itself, so to actually make more of themselves. So this is their way of reproduction of the organism. When we look at the cell, when we talk about cell reproduction, the most important thing is to take a look at this thing we're calling the genome. So this DNA is what makes up the genome. Remember that DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, is found in our cells as a double helix, and it's found in the nucleus. Now, in a prokaryote, they have DNA as well, but it's found kind of loosely wound within this area we're calling a nucleoid, right? So it's not a nucleus, it's just an area within this prokaryotic cell, and it's a double strand, and it's somewhat circular. Now, these cells also, though, can have, so here's its main double-stranded DNA for this bacterial cell, but they can also have little loops of DNA called plasmids. And plasmids are really important in that plasmids provide a way for one bacterial cell to exchange genes with another. So we're going to see how genes get transferred from this bacteria to perhaps another one that we don't see in the picture. Our genome, or eukaryotic cells, which means us and plants and most things that you're familiar with, have this double-stranded DNA, but the DNA is found in these things we're calling chromosomes, and they are in a nucleus. So this picture on the right is actually one that we would typically look for in class. If we had a chance to do a lab on this, we would see the cells, in this case, in various stages of their development and their reproduction. But what we're kind of seeing here, you can see in these little images, is we have the chromosomes. Now, our chromosomes all species have a specific chromosome number. We can, in this case, what they're showing is human chromosomes, and we can see that every chromosome has a partner. So we have pairs of chromosomes. Here's pair number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, etc. But a cat and a dog and a fern and all of the different organisms out there have their own unique number of chromosomes. And those chromosomes are found in these pairs. So when we see this and we say that, oh, here's us, let's go to humans. So humans have 46 individual chromosomes. We also know that those chromosomes are found with a partner, so they're in pairs. So in this case, a human, which has 46 individual chromosomes, would be said to have 23 pairs of chromosomes. And that condition is called diploid. So we're going to look at these terms again. But notice the difference here. So a dog has more chromosomes than we do. And also notice that all of these numbers are even, because we're looking at pairs, or that these form pairs with another chromosome. And I'll show you that. So, cells, all cells. We really have two categories of cells. We have cells that are found in your body that make up all of the things that we think of, or most of the things we think of. So all of your body tissue, your skin cells and your liver cells and your bone cells and all of those. They're all cells which are going to have this matched set of chromosomes, so pairs of chromosomes, and which we can then say again is diploid. So this 2n is referring to some number for that organism that represents this diploid condition, meaning that they have all of the chromosomes are in pairs. And because we talk about them as being body cells, we can use the term somatic. So soma means body, so a somatic cell is all those ones I just discussed. But we also have one set of chromosomes that only have 1/2 of the number in their nuclei of chromosomes. So that's why we use the symbol 1n. It means they don't have pairs, they only have individual chromosomes. And that means that they are haploid. The cells that are haploid are our sex cells, or gametes. For us, that'd be eggs and sperm, sometimes also called germ cells. And they're only going to have 1/2 of the chromosome number that all of the rest of the body cells have. And that makes sense intuitively, right? Because we know that we are formed from the union of two sex cells, two gametes. And so once they come together, those two individual haploid gametes together are going to form the first cell in our body, which will be diploid. We'll have one from mom, one from dad for every single one of those chromosomes. When you take the chromosomes and you arrange them in a picture, that's called a karyotype. And I'll show you a karyotype here coming in the next slide. But basically it's taking those pairs, which are considered, each of them are considered homologous, meaning that for each pair, each one of them is containing basically the same information in that DNA, or the same genes. There's one exception, and that is if you're male, you have a pair of chromosomes that are different, and those are heterologous. You have an X that you got from your mother and a Y that you would get from your father if you're male. But all the other ones are homologous because they have one from mom and one from dad, but they have the same information on it, where the X and the Y don't. So here's a karyotype. Here's a human karyotype where basically some researcher took the chromosomes out when they were able to be taken out and arranged them in their pairs, or in their partnerships here. So chromosome number 1 has one from mom and one from dad. Chromosome number 2, you got one of those from mom and one from dad. So these karyotypes are what is just the visualization of this. Now I'm questioning this picture a little bit, but I'll explain that later. But basically just getting the general idea that if we said that this is a single chromosome, that this would be the one from the other parent. This picture is showing a little more than that, but stay tuned. All of the ones that aren't sex cells can also be called autosomes. And then the sex chromosomes are just called sex chromosomes. So karyotype is the chromosomes are arranged according to shape and size, and that's because they contain the same general information on them. Now, what's interesting is if we just look at a typical cell under a microscope, we generally don't see chromosomes very visibly. But in truth, what they do, because there's a lot of DNA in each of the nuclei of our cells, when we actually can see them, it's because they've organized in this way that we're going to look at here. And so that what they do is here's the DNA. Remember, deoxyribonucleic acid. So that's our, remember, A's, C's, T's, and G's with these phosphate sugar backbones. That's basically DNA. But DNA it becomes supercoiled. It becomes like organized around some proteins we're going to call histones. So it starts to coil up, coil up, coil up, and then eventually forms this thing that we're going to look at down here called a chromosome. And this chromosome here in this picture actually has made a copy of itself. But this thing is the supercoiling that takes place. And I'll show you that in this image. So the DNA wrap around, so picture this DNA, here it is, this is the double helix, it wraps around these little proteins which are called histones, and then even some of those combine and we get even further wrapping, and what we get is something called chromatin. It's just a supercoiled wrapping of this DNA around these proteins that ultimately can organize into something that looks like the thing you see at the top. Here's an enlarged picture of that. So here's the DNA, and it's wrapping around these different histone proteins. Here's another one right next door. So sometimes it's looked at as beads on a string. So here, the beads part of it here, the histone proteins with this DNA wrapped around it. And then there's a little piece that goes to the next one, and that's called linker DNA. So it's just a way to look at it. I encourage you, though, to look at this. So this is in OpenStax, and here is the link to this video, and it's going to show you how chromosomes actually get packaged in the nucleus, just like what we've just described. And I think if I clicked on it, I probably could get to it, but I think it's easier for you to watch this one on your own. So take advantage of these little videos that OpenStax offers to you. And I'm going to stop there and go on in the next set of the next video into this thing we're going to call the cell cycle. So stay tuned.